Not My Lover was a title we almost used for Billie Jean because Q had some objections to calling the song Billie Jean, my original title. He felt people might immediately think of Billie Jean King, the tennis player. A lot of people have asked me about that song, and the answer is very simple. It's just a case of a girl who says that I'm the father of her child and I'm pleading my innocence because the kid is not my son. There was never a real Billie Jean, except for the ones who came after the song. The girl in the song is a composite of people we've been plagued by over the years. This kind of thing has happened to some of my brothers, and I used to be really amazed by it. I couldn't understand how these girls could say they were carrying someone's child when it wasn't true. I can't imagine lying about something like that. Even today, there are girls who come to the gate at our house and say the strangest things like, "Oh, I'm Michael's wife," or "I'm just dropping off the keys to our apartment." I remember one girl who used to drive us completely crazy. I really think that she believed in her mind that she belonged with me. There was another girl who claimed I had gone to bed with her and she made threats. There have been a couple of serious scuffles at the gate on Havenhurst and they can get dangerous. People yell into the intercom that Jesus sent them to speak with me and God told them to come unusual and unsettling things. A musician knows hit material. It has to feel right. Everything has to feel in place. It fulfills you and it makes you feel good. You know it when you hear it. That's how I felt about Billie Jean. I knew it was going to be big while I was writing it. I was really absorbed in that song. One day during a break in a recording session, I was riding down the Ventura Freeway with Nelson Hayes, who was working with me at the time. Billie Jean was going around in my head, and that's all I was thinking about. We were getting off the freeway when a kid on a motorcycle pulls up to us and says, "Your car's on fire." Suddenly we noticed the smoke and pulled over and the whole bottom of the Rolls Royce was on fire. That kid probably saved our lives. If the car had exploded, we could have been killed. But I was so absorbed by this tune floating in my head that I didn't even focus on the awful possibilities until later. Even while we were getting help and finding an alternate way to get where we were going, I was silently composing additional material. That's how involved I was with Billie Jean. Before I wrote Beat It, I had been thinking I wanted to write the type of rock song that I would go out and buy, but also something totally different from the rock music I was hearing on Top 40 radio at the time. Beat It was written with school kids in mind. I've always loved creating pieces that will appeal to kids. It's fun to write for them and know what they like because they're a very demanding audience. You can't fool them. They are still the audience that's most important to me because I really care about them. If they like it, it's a hit, no matter what the charts say. The lyrics of Beat It express something I would do if I were in trouble. Its message that we should abhor violence is something I believe deeply. It tells kids to be smart and avoid trouble. I don't mean to say you should turn the other cheek while someone kicks in your teeth, but unless your back is against the wall and you have absolutely no choice, just get away before violence breaks out. If you fight and get killed, you've gained nothing and lost everything. You're the loser, and so are the people who love you. That's what Beat It is supposed to get across. To me, true bravery is settling differences without a fight and having the wisdom to make that solution possible. When Q called Eddie Van Halen, he thought it was a crank call. Because of the bad connection, Eddie was convinced that the voice on the other end was a fake. After being told to get lost, Q simply dialed the number again. Eddie agreed to play the session for us and gave us an incredible guitar solo on Beat It. The newest members of our team were the band Toto, who had the hit records Rosanna and Africa. They had been well known as individual session musicians before they came together as a group. Because of their experience, they knew both sides of studio work, when to be independent and when to be cooperative and follow the producer's lead. Steve Porcaro had worked on Off the Wall during a break as keyboardist for Toto. This time he brought his bandmates with him. Musicologists know that the band's leader, David Paich, is the son of Marty Paich, who worked on Ray Charles's great records like I Can't Stop Loving You. I love Pretty Young Thing, which was written by Quincy and James Ingram. Don't Stop Till You Get Enough had whetted my appetite for the spoken intro, partly because I didn't think my speaking voice was something my singing needed to hide. I have always had a soft speaking voice. I haven't cultivated it or chemically altered it. That's me. Take it or leave it. Imagine what it must be like to be criticized for something about yourself that is natural and God-given. Imagine the hurt of having untruths spread by the press, of having people wonder if you're telling the truth defending yourself because someone decided it would make good copy and would force you to deny what they said, thus creating another story. I've tried not to answer such ridiculous charges in the past because that dignifies them and the people who make them. Remember, the press is a business. Newspapers and magazines are in business to make money, sometimes at the expense of accuracy, fairness, and even the truth. Anyway, in the intro to Pretty Young Thing, I sounded a bit more confident than I had on the last album. I liked the code in the lyrics, and tenderoni and sugarfly were fun rock and roll type words that you couldn't find in the dictionary. I got Janet and LaToya into the studio for this one, and they produced the real backup vocals. James Ingram and I programmed an electronic device called a vocoder, which gave out that ET voice. Human Nature was the song the Toto guys brought to Q, and he and I both agreed that the song had the prettiest melody we'd heard in a long time, even more than Africa. It's music with wings. People ask me about the lyrics. Why does he do me that way? I like loving this way. People often think the lyrics you're singing have some special personal significance for you, which often isn't true. It is important to reach people, to move them. Sometimes one can do this with the mosaic of the music melody arrangement and lyrics. Sometimes it is the intellectual content of the lyrics. I was asked a lot of questions about Muscles, the song I wrote and produced for Diana Ross. That song fulfilled a lifelong dream of returning some of the many favors she's done for me. I have always loved Diana and looked up to her. Muscles, by the way, is the name of my snake. The Lady in My Life was one of the most difficult tracks to cut. We were used to doing a lot of takes in order to get a vocal as nearly perfect as possible, but Quincy wasn't satisfied with my work on that song, even after literally dozens of takes. Finally, he took me aside late one session and told me he wanted me to beg. That's what he said. He wanted me to go back to the studio and literally beg for it. So I went back in and had them turn off the studio lights and close the curtain between the studio and the control room so I wouldn't feel self-conscious. Q started the tape and I begged. The result is what you hear in the grooves. Eventually we came under tremendous pressure from our record company to finish Thriller. When a record company rushes you, they really rush you, and they were rushing us hard on Thriller. They said it had to be ready on a certain date, do or die. So we went through a period where we were breaking our backs to get the album done by their deadline. There were a lot of compromises made on the mixes of various tracks and on whether certain tracks were even going to be on the record. We cut so many corners that we almost lost the whole album. When we finally listened to the tracks we were going to hand in, Thriller sounded so crappy to me that tears came to my eyes. We had been under enormous pressure because while we were trying to finish Thriller, we also had been working on the E.T. storybook, and there had been deadline pressure on that as well. All these people were fighting back and forth with each other, and we came to realize that the sad truth was that the mixes of Thriller didn't work.